Okay, Chair, I can confirm that the meeting is now live stream on YouTube and also being recorded. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Good evening and welcome to the virtual meeting of East Devon District Council on the 8th of December 2021. As your Chair, Councillor Ian Thomas, I'd like to welcome viewers to our live stream on YouTube. Can I remind everyone that due to concerns relating to COVID risk, our council's delegated much of its decision making to senior officers for the period to the 17th of January 2022. Consequently, this evening will be a consultative meeting only. However, we will work as closely as possible to normal procedural rules as detailed in our constitution. Where our meeting would normally have decided a matter, it will now make recommendation to a senior officer. That officer will then take our recommendation into account when making their decision. May I remind colleagues that the code of conduct applies throughout this meeting. We reserve the right to disconnect any disruptive participants. If there's a break in internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. Should we not be successful within 15 minutes, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. As this is a large meeting, it's particularly important colleagues ensure microphones are muted, please, when not in use, to avoid disturbance from background noise. If you wish to speak, please raise your yellow hand and wait to be called. Keep points short and do not interrupt while others are speaking. Our full agenda is available online on the council website. Before we start the meeting, actually with a roll call, I'd just like to thank Councillor Sam Hawkin, who has agreed to step in as Vice Chair for this evening and assist. So thank you to Sam. So obviously if I get incapacitated, then he will take over. So if we could now start the meeting with a roll call and pass it across to you, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Barrow.
Present.
Councillor Bickley.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Blakey.
Present.
Councillor Bonetta. Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Bruce.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Cahill.
Present.
Councillor Chapman.
Present.
Councillor Coleman.
Present.
Councillor Davey.
Present.
Councillor Desarum.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Dent.
Present.
Councillor Faithful. Thought I'd seen Councillor Faithful arrive. I'll ask him again in a moment. Councillor Gardner.
Present.
Councillor Gazzard.
Present.
Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Councillor Hayward.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Hookway.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Howe.
Present.
Councillor Hughes.
Present.
Councillor Ingham.
Present.
Councillor Jackson.
Present.
Oh. Councillor Jarvis.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Johns.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Young.
Present.
Councillor Kemp.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Key.
Present, Sue, thank you.
Councillor Lawrence.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Ledger. Councillor Loudon.
Present, thanks, Sue.
Councillor Manley. Councillor McCollum.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Miller.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Moulding.
Present.
Councillor Parr.
Present.
Councillor Pepper. Councillor Pook.
Present.
Councillor Pratt.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Ranger? You sure I saw Councillor Ranger?
Present.
Ah,
I'm present. Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Rickson?
Present, thank you.
Councillor Rowland?
Present, thanks, Sue.
Councillor Rylance?
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner? Councillor Taylor?
Sorry, so Councillor Skinner sends his apologies. They found me earlier on.
Councillor Thomas?
Present.
Councillor Twiss?
Present.
Councillor Wibley?
Present.
Councillor Woodward?
Present, thank you.
Councillor Ragg?
Present.
Councillor Chris Wright?
Present.
Councillor Tom Wright?
Present, thank you, Sue.
I just apologies. I'm here, Peter Faithful.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Councillor Faithful. Right. Okay. I think that's it, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I can confirm that the meeting's quorate. First item is agenda item 1, public speaking. Now, I note Councillor Raggs raised a yellow hand. Is that relate to this, Eileen?
It does indeed. I've been asked to read a statement.
Is this on behalf of a
yeah.
constituent? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So if I could start, could I?
Please do. Yeah.
Thank you. Dear Councillor Ragg, as a ward member for my family in Exmouth, I thank you for reading this statement on my behalf. This follows from Council appointing former Conservative member John Humphreys as an alderman in December 2019. Before removing that in September 2021, I have provided you with my name, which has been verified by the police. I am one of many victims of John Humphreys' crimes, and I want members and officers of this council and the public to hear of what I have had to endure for the last 22 years. I was sent as a 14-year-old from my school on work experience to Humphreys' gardening business. I was a very innocent 14-year-old and did not know what to do about his assaults on me until I finally told my mother in 2004. She took me to Exmouth Police Station where I made a full signed statement. Then I heard nothing at all, except I was regularly harassed by local police officers afterwards. In 2005, they just said that the case had been dropped. I did my best to get on with my life and worked hard as a self-employed builder, but the hurt inside me was always there. Then in 2011 and 12, the Jimmy Savile case was reported. Also, I'd met my partner, and when we found out she was pregnant, I thought, let's do something about it. Now I'm bringing a child into the world. I rang up to get the case reopened again in 2012. All I got was a threatening phone call from a Tiverton officer. His near exact words were, Humphreys is now mayor. He's getting on with his life. If you do anything or proceed with this in court, we will come for your friends and family. So I made an official complaint about the threats and was asked into Sidmouth Police Station. They said an apology will be read out. It was handwritten and wasn't even an apology. I wasn't given anything in writing that I could take away. When Humphrey's case came to court this year, not being able to talk about how the police had treated me was my biggest concern. Don't open this can of worms right now, was all that was said to me. I just felt like blurting it out, stood in the box, once all the lies were being thrown at me. In 2015, after many more years of mental stress, a knock came on the door at my mum's house. It was a female police officer. Someone else had come forward. I couldn't believe it. I'd not been believed twice, but the other victim was a lot older than me and maybe more credible. And there was a third and fourth victim too, but it still took yet another 6 years for justice to be done. Humphreys was originally arrested on the 11th of May 2016. On the 24th of January 2017, a file was handed to the Crown Prosecution Service. It took them a long time to deal with this, and the case came to court in August 2021. The police say that Humphreys knew that the case was live during this time, 2016 to 21. His legal team communicated with the officer in charge, and at no time was he told that the case was not being proceeded with. This leaves me wondering who else knew, and how was he allowed to carry on, as usual, being a councillor at Exmouth and East Devon. When he was convicted, Humphrey's sentence was set by the judge at 21 years, meaning he must serve at least 2/3, 14 years. He will remain on the sex offenders register indefinitely. I have been told that this is one of the longest sentences ever passed for crimes of this sort. I consider that part of my healing from all this started when I walked into the witness box and was able to say what I needed and finally be heard. I insisted they took away the screen so I could look him in the eye. It has helped me with my psychological fear of him, as I have always viewed him as a man of influence and standing in the community. I still feel that Humphreys has been favoured because of his connections, his apparent good character, and social standing as a councillor. I think he sat as a representative on the Devon and Cornwall Police Scrutiny Committee, and he obviously knew all the top people in the Conservatives and the Masons. In my mind, he's been a monster to me. He took away my teenage years, and this has gone into my adulthood. I should have retained that innocence, but that choice was taken away from me by this man. There are still so many questions to be answered. After the verdict, I was still ignored. I'd like to be heard. It is important to me that the council hears me, hears my statement. What difference it makes, I don't know. Maybe a few people will be sat there worried. It will be nice to be heard. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. And I met this young man for the first time on Monday this week. And he's entirely credible. He's obviously been deeply affected, very, very thin, unable to work because he damaged his back working. But I was very, very moved. Thank you.
I'm not surprised, Councillor Wragg. Thank you for that. Obviously, I wasn't expecting that statement, but
no, I know you weren't, and I didn't mean to. I thank you for allowing me to read it out, because
no, that's not a problem. I think it's always hard to say the right thing under such circumstances. I think all I would say is that as far as I would thank all the members of the council for supporting the initiative I took, as you know, in pushing for the removal of the alderman status from former Councillor Hughes. And as I said at the time, our thoughts at that point were sincerely with the victims. It was a horrible experience.
And Chair, if I could add, the worrying aspect of this for me is that there was no criminal record. A DBS check wouldn't have picked that up.
No.
But the worrying thing is that children were being sent from the school straight to a paedophile for work experience. That is so worrying. There's a lot more needs to be investigated here.
Yeah, I think it would not without the knowledge, it would not be appropriate for me to comment further. And as I say, I was pleased and heartened by the support I received in our move, that we moved swiftly and decisively to remove the women's status and to go public and basically in our support for this young gentleman, or not so quite so young gentleman now, and anybody else who had been unfortunately subject to the activities of former Councillor Humphreys. So as I say,
Well, I thank you on his behalf as well for taking that initiative, Councillor Thomas. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I do have two hands. I don't necessarily want to develop the discussion too much this evening on that item if members are happy. But I've got Councillor Ingham, please, first, and then I'll follow with Councillor Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank Councillor Ragg for doing what she's just done, which is definitely the right thing to do. And I'd like to make a request, Chair. Can Councillor Ragg thank the young man for taking the time to write what he has and to pass it on to us? I believe we all needed to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. He's been very brave, and his mother as well.
Well, can I support that as the chair as well, Eileen, because it's totally consistent with our approach, our response so far.
Thank you.
And as you say, there's clearly a lot more in relation to the police activities, times and whatever that we're not familiar with, and will no doubt come out in due course. Councillor Bruce. Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. I would add my applause to the bravery of this gentleman coming forward. And I think we all would sing in one voice on this particular issue. What's horrifying is how this sort of thing can exist in plain sight, as Eileen said, but no checks could have brought this up. So the only way forward, as we've seen with this child that was murdered by his parents recently, we just have to be vigilant, and we have to make sure that those authorities that look after this sort of thing are always up to speed and pay attention when these things are brought to their attention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Bailey, Jess.
Thank you very much, and I agree with the comments that have been made by my colleagues, Councillor Bruce and Councillor Ingham. But I do feel that as a council, we need to examine our role and understand how it came about that this person was promoted. And this is something that I did raise, I think, at that particular meeting when the aldermanship was removed. And so I would like some clarity, please, on what's being done to prevent this happening again. Thank you.
Plenty stuff, surely.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bailey. I've got Councillor Desarum next. Bruce.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. I totally concur with the actions that you have already outlined that you took, and I'd like to express my deepest sympathy goes out tonight to this young man. And I can understand quite how horrific it is, and I wish to offer, as a personal member, I wish to offer my deepest sympathies to this young man. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. Councillor Arnott, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I'd like to just address this in a slightly calmer moment, particularly following Councillor Bailey's comments there at item 6, which is announcements from leader, if that's okay for you. Thank you.
Certainly. Yeah, no problem from my point of view. Councillor Jarvis, Paul.
I'd just like to say thank you, Councillor Ragg, for being there. In real honesty, young men are less likely to come forward, and that is the truth. Less likely to be believed. That's not just in this scenario, but that's in domestic violence, etc. So, Eileen, please pass on my best wishes to this young man.
Thank you very much. That's I don't have anybody else indicating to speak at this point. So if you're happy, I'll move on to agenda item 2, which are minutes from the previous council meeting. If members have any comments on the minutes from the council on the 20th of October, could you please raise your electronic hand? In the absence of that, can I invite members to vote in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes, please, in the normal fashion? If we could take a vote now, please.
Okay, Chair, I have 2 hands up. I'm not sure what that is. And 40 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I've got Councillor Key. Did I miss your hand, or did it come up as we were voting?
No, sorry, I pressed the wrong button.
All right, no problem.
It should be green.
Okay, I've got Councillor Arnott's also got his hand up. Was that a hand up? No, right. Can we go for the hat trick? Was Councillor Twist's an intentional hand or not?
Yeah, intentional hand. My apologies. I'm used to being on Teams and struggling to find the right button, so my apologies.
Okay, that's no worries. That was quick, wasn't it? We got through that one. Anyway, so that's, I can now confirm that the minutes are received and noted. Agenda item 3 I've got is apologies. I have received apologies so far from Councillor Kim Blocks and Councillor Sarah Chamberlain. I did have Councillor Alan Dent, but he seems to have snuck under the door and come as well. So welcome, Alan, if you're still here. Councillor Ian Hall and Councillor Marcus Hartnell. Do we have any others, please, Sue?
Well, I think we've had it confirmed that Councillor Philip Skinner is has given his apologies. I've also just received apologies from Councillor Mike Allen and Councillor Jake Bonetta.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more from anybody in the room, or is that everybody? Everybody covered. Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. If during the meeting you wish to make a declaration, please remember to state your declaration, including which agenda item it relates to, and if it's personal or prejudicial, and what exactly your interest is. I don't think we need to go through, but if anybody wants to declare an interest at this point, please do raise your hand. If not, we'll move forward to agenda item 5. Matters of urgency. I've got 3 matters of urgency to be dealt with tonight, which relate to items 9B, 9D and 9L. And we'll come to those in due course. Announcements from the chair or leader. I don't have any announcements from the chair, but on the other hand, I understand that the leader does. So, Paul, if you'd like to pick up, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, indeed. I don't think it's appropriate for me to editorialise at this stage on what we have just heard from Councillor Ragg. All I will say is that this young man from 1999 until 2020 has been by John Hubbins, so there's no doubt about that. And I consider him to be one of the bravest people who's ever lived in East Devon. And I think that's really important. Not only has he seen this through to a prosecution, he has brought forward this statement tonight through Councillor Ragg. And I know from having spoken to Councillor Ragg, he was prepared to waive anonymity tonight and come on Zoom and say this himself. That's how strongly he felt. But quite rightly, he was advised that he shouldn't, because he has a family to think of, and on Zoom, we're there for eternity, aren't we? So I think there are 3 actions that as leader I will immediately take. The first is I will be writing in the morning to Chief Constable Sean Sawyer, and I will be asking him to refer his force to the Independent Office for Police Conduct to look at how this was handled in the earlier years of this matter. I would wish to add at this stage that some measure of congratulation is due to the Crown Prosecution Service and the officers involved, both led, I think, significantly by women who actually managed to close this prosecution in the end. So this isn't about a witch hunt of the current police force. There are clearly things to look in about past conduct. That's action 1. Action 2, the lead councillor for this, for Councillor Humphreys, ex-Councillor Humphreys' party, has been Councillor Philip Twist, and I will be writing to him tomorrow. I will be asking him to share with us the outcomes of the internal inquiry from the local Conservative Party into this matter. And if he replies that an internal inquiry has not yet happened, I will ask him for the commencement date, and still if he is prepared to share the outcomes of that inquiry and indeed admit evidence from other contributors. Third and finally, what can this council do right now? I thank you, Chair, for the leadership you have shown around the Alderman matter. And I think, having heard this today from the victim, what a disgrace that was. What a disgrace that was. It was clearly widely known in December 2019 that this man had been, he'd been charged years earlier. You know, it begs a question, doesn't it, really? Why didn't he stand as a candidate in May 2019? Well, my understanding is that plenty of people knew what he had done, and yet still the alderman process was pursued. I think a measure of political mischief has been pursued by the Conservative Party with deflection conduct around what they know perfectly well we cannot do in law, which is to insist that everybody has a DBS check. So I want to move forward from that point now. I am hugely indebted to conversations I have had with Councillor Joe Wibley, who has a deep understanding of these matters. And I think what we must do immediately is what Councillor Wibley is suggesting. He is planning at our February council meeting to bring forward a motion with regard to urgent safeguarding training, mandatory for all councillors. And we have to listen to that. We have to take part in that now. While all this nonsense about DBX, which would not have caught Councillor Humphreys, is played out, or I hope played out for the last time by the local Conservative Party, we must now undergo safeguard training. And with that, we must take actions to make sure that there is a safe path, as there is in schools under various schemes, for people who have reasonable suspicions about people. And my God, I've never met Councillor Humphreys. I'd never heard of him until a few years ago. But, you know, it's pretty clear to anybody from Exmouth, the man was a bully in plain sight, not just about this matter. He was an intimidating figure in matters to do with Exmouth. And I wonder if our council had a quiet listening ear that could be somebody could go to and say, really worried about this guy. Because from the details of this case, there must have been good reasons to be fearful. So that's the third action, Chair, that we bring forward a motion in February. I'm sure Councillor Wibley will do a brilliant job of drafting it with help of officers, and I will be pleased to second that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Arnott, and I will similarly be very pleased to see that come forward in February, and we'll pick up from there. Okay. Agenda item 7, confidential and exempt items. No items have been recommended by officers to be dealt with as confidential or exempt. Agenda item 8, to answer questions asked by Councillor Miller, members of the council pursuant to procedure rules 9.2 and 9.5. 13 questions have been received. All have been responded to in writing and published prior to the meeting. And Councillor Miller, do you have any supplementaries, please?
Yeah, I'd planned to, but following the speech by Councillor Ragg, I frankly feel too emotional. And also, I think it would be inappropriate to address another issue at this point whilst I feel this way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. As just to state, obviously, any questions that might come to light or can be answered by portfolio holders or by myself as chair, or indeed the leader, as and when they come forward. So, you know, don't feel the need to necessarily wait until a council meeting. If you need an answer to any of these questions, we can pick them up offline afterwards. Hopefully that's helpful. Councillor Cahill. Sorry, is this a wish to speak at this point?
Yes, I'm just wondering whether I can ask the answer to Councillor Miller's first question, 101. Is there a breakdown of those figures as to where they are? I know they're in the district, but is there a breakdown of where those 101 empty homes are?
I mean, I can't answer that, but if
I'm not expecting you to,
if the portfolio holder is here and in a position to answer that, or if not, perhaps we can relay that to the portfolio holder to pick up after the meeting. Would that be okay?
Yeah, certainly.
Actually, I am here.
Okay. Are you
I've been waving at you, Chair, but you're...
Sorry, I've just seen your hand come up, Megan. Would you like to answer now, or would you like to come back later?
I can't answer specifically where, but there is a breakdown, as Councillor will be aware, I'm sure, that we do have voids which are dealt with on an ongoing basis. And I've got figures, if he's interested, I can pass them on to him separately, of what is being done to each of them or to groups of them, what stage they're at. And also I could try and find out, or I will find out if that's appropriate to the officers to find out whereabouts those voids are.
Grateful, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Armstrong. Moving on from there, we're on to agenda item 9, which are the reports from Cabinet and Council's committees and questions on those reports. Where there's a general point, councillors, can we receive the minutes of the following committees, but where those minutes include recommendations, would members please at those points vote in favour or against recommending approval? Where minutes contain no recommendations, our vote is simply to receive and note. The recommendations from all committees are summarised on pages 14 and 15 of the agenda papers. Okay. First one is Leader, Cabinet on 3rd of November, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to present the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 3rd of November 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could take a vote on that, please. All those in favour or against of receiving and noting these minutes, please.
Okay, Chair, I have people still voting. 44 people are voting for to approve the minutes.
Lovely, thank you very much. I can confirm that these minutes are received and noted. Agenda item 9B appears as a matter of urgency I referred to earlier. That's because this item's been added because of its in the meeting of the 1st of December, Cabinet reversed an earlier recommendation, from the meeting on the 3rd of November. The matter relates to Honiton Community Governance Review, and accordingly the Council position has been revised. An additional recommendation relating to the use of the Transformation Fund also needs to be approved before our next scheduled full Council meeting in February. So, Leader, could you please pick up on your minutes of the 1st of December?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for that, which is clear an explanation, much clearer than I could probably give. So therefore, with that in mind, may I offer for approval, please, the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 1st of December 2021 with those amended actions.
Okay, could I just hold a second on that? I've got Councillor Twiss as indicating a wish to speak. Is this a real one, Councillor Twiss?
This is a real hand. It's very brief. I'd just like actually to thank the Cabinet for reversing the recommendation, which makes a lot of sense, quite frankly. The proposals were ill prepared, extremely before the event, and I'm sure in due course when we come to review, then it would be welcome, but it's far, far too early to be considering this. So I thank the Cabinet for that. And that's really all I need to say on the matter, as it looks like it's going to go through. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Twiss. Would members now vote, please, in the usual fashion, using your green tick in favour of receiving and noting these minutes, or red cross against.
Okay, Chair, there are 43 votes in favour, 45, sorry, and a thumbs up.
Councillor Twiss's hand's up again, so I'm assuming this is a positive, supportive hand this time.
Absolutely, just taking it down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm getting used to it, Phil. Anyway, and next one, confirm therefore that minutes are received and noted for that meeting. Next, I've got Councillor Vicky Johns, minutes of the Overview Committee on the 18th of November, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm swapping from one screen to another. So I've got minutes of the Overview Committee held on the 18th of November 2021, minute number 7 to 14.
Thank you very much. Could members please vote again in favour of receiving and noting these minutes?
Chair, I have 41-42 voting in favour and a thumbs up and a hand raised.
Again, I've got Councillor Arnott now waving his hand. Is that a supporting hand or is that a wishing to speak hand?
Wild software, Chair. I'm hoping just a simple tick. Is that okay? Is that
we've got a tick now. We're all ticked.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding was we had a tick for, a cross against, and a hand was an abstention.
That's correct, but I wanted to check that whether there's a reason behind it. But thank you for clarifying that, Councillor Faithful. Next item I've got is agenda item 9D, which comes under another matter of urgency. This item's been added to the agenda as a matter of urgency as Cabinet received recommendations in its meeting of the 1st of December relating to public toilet review. This subject had previously been debated at an extraordinary meeting of the Overview Committee on the 25th of November. So again, Councillor Vicky Johns, please, can you bring your minutes from the 25th of November?
Minutes of the Overview Committee meeting held on the 25th of November 2021, minutes numbers 15 to 17. I know there's queries on it. Hold on, I'm just trying to find it on my screen. I don't know if Sue can find it quicker than I can. For some reason, mine's not playing ball this evening.
Sorry, Councillor Johns, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for the reason it's been queried this evening. I had it in front of me earlier and now it's disappeared. I do apologise for this.
Not aware of anything, I'm afraid.
Sorry, I wasn't aware that there'd been a call minute on that one, Councillor Johns, but I noticed Councillor Blakey's hand is raised. Was that set any clarification or is that related to a call?
Sorry, Chair, that was not intended. Don't know how that happened.
I'll tell you what, we're getting very hand happy tonight, aren't we? It must be Christmas coming, I think. We're all putting our hands up. I'm not actually aware of whether Henry's there at all, whether he can confirm whether there actually is a call minute, because I'm not aware of one.
No call minutes.
False alarm, Vicky. No call minutes. So if you'd like to move the minutes, then we're...
Hands keep waving at me and I'm like, oh, okay, yes, I'd like to move those minutes if I may, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we could vote on that, please. That's green in favour and red against, or a hand will take us an abstention.
Okay. Okay. There are 40 votes in favour and still moving, Chair, sorry. 41 votes in favour and 2 abstentions.
Thank you very much. I can confirm the minutes are received and noted. Next, I've got Councillor Ledger, Strategic Planning Committee on the 9th of November.
I don't think Councillor Ledger's here.
No,
Chair.
I don't think he is, Chair. So as Vice Chair, I will bring those. Yep. So this is agenda item 9E, the minutes of Strategic Planning Committee held on the 9th of November. If I've got the minutes right, it's 42 to... Keep on scrolling through. 50. So if we could accept those minutes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Would members please vote in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes?
Just about to announce the result and the numbers change again. I've got 43 votes in favour and 1 hand raised, so I assume that's an abstention.
Thank you. I can confirm that the minutes are received and noted. Next, I've got Councillor Wragg, minutes of the Planning Committee on the 27th of October and on the 24th of November.
I so moved these minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wragg. Would members please vote in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes as normal?
Chair, I have 44 votes in favour, Chair.
Thank you very much. I can confirm these minutes are received and noted. Next, I've got Councillor Wibley, minutes of licensing enforcement on 17th of November, please.
Hi there. Yeah, I so these minutes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could we please vote again in favour or against as normal?
I have 41 votes, 42 votes in favour.
Thank you again. I can confirm minutes are received and noted. Again, back to Councillor Wibley for his subcommittee on the 24th of November, please.
Yeah, could I first of all thank Councillor Fox and the other members of the committee that day for running an excellent show, and I move these minutes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Would members please vote in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes?
Chair, I have 43 votes in favour.
Thank you. I can confirm those minutes are received and noted. Next, I've got Councillor Hawkins, Audit and Governance on the 18th of November, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to present the minutes of the Audit and Governance Committee held on the 18th of November 2021, minutes numbers 17 to 26.
Thank you very much. Would members please vote in favour or against receiving and noting?
I've called it,
minutes?
Chair.
Pardon?
Chair, I've called the minute, so.
Oh, my apologies. I've not been made aware of a called minute. Henry, could you clarify, please?
My understanding was that Councillor Miller wanted to, but he wanted to have a further conversation with me before doing so, and I don't think that ever happened. So I was on the assumption it hadn't been called, but my apologies if that was wrong.
Well, I have called it. I'm not wishing to change any recommendation if there isn't any. I want to comment on the minutes presented. I've called it because as an attendee at that meeting, I think it's worth setting the record straight on harmful misinformation spread by one political group following the meeting. Following that meeting, Councillor Twist sent out a press release on behalf of the EDDC Conservative group claiming that 4 members of the Audit and Governance Committee had failed to vote for a motion, and I now quote directly from the release, requiring all councillors to undergo DBS checks. None of this is included in these minutes, none of those details, because it quite simply didn't happen. On the contrary, Councillor Twist made a very vague recommendation, seconded by Councillor Barrow, that central government be lobbied on the issue. However, the Conservatives group's proposal did not refer to the minister responsible, nor did it specify who the letter would be written from or exactly what kind of check he was asking for. Although Councillor Twist's false press release was ignored by the vast majority of well-respected local publishers on the basis of the fact it had no bearing with reality, its contents remains on one EDDC Conservative councillor's Facebook page and was reported as fact by a very small local radio station. As a result of Councillor Twist's smears of his colleagues, members of the public have been suggesting on social media that the councillors who voted against this motion may have something to hide in relation to their criminal history. I think it's our right as councillors to robustly criticise one another if we feel decisions are not in the public interest, for example, but to spread downright lies, as Councillor Twist has done, in the manner in which he's done so, betrays the victims of the appalling crimes of his former colleague, John Humphreys. The victims deserve real answers, not knee-jerk phony campaigns by a political group on an issue they know we have no control over. The behaviour I identify leads to very damaging rumours against innocent people and understandable fears for councillors' public safety. In the wake of the murder of Sir David Amis and a recent attack on a Labour councillor in Yorkshire, this behaviour cannot continue to go unchallenged. Thank you, Chair, and I would like those minutes to be corrected to ensure that the press can never report something like that, which just simply isn't true. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. In the first, I've got some speakers and want to come back on that, but in the first instance, obviously, I'll revert to the chair of the committee to see if he would like to comment on that.
No, not this time, thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkin. I know there is no right of reply inferred in our constitution, but under the circumstances, I feel I must give Councillor Twist the right to respond.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not going to lower myself, I suppose, to replying to that absolute rant. But I am happy to confirm that the Conservative group will continue to lobby for mandatory DBS checks until they become law. That won't change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Gardner. Kathy.
Yes, I would like to comment about this because we have had to endure these constant demands for absolutely pointless and, in fact, impossible DBS checks that would prove absolutely nothing and would not prevent the kind of hideous crimes that we've heard about tonight. And I find it deeply upsetting that on social media, members of the public are just starting to feel that people like myself must have something to hide. And I find that really, really upsetting. I think it's really wrong. So whilst the Conservative group may continue to lobby their own government for a change in the law, I do believe we should stop doing this at this council because we all know what the situation is. Henry has prepared reports, I think, twice. This is it's just stirring the muck for the sake of making trouble. And I hope we've seen the end of it.
Thank you very much. Henry, would you like to comment at all at this point, or shall we move on and come back to it?
No, thank you.
Okay, well, there obviously, the only thing I would comment on this is that there obviously was a detailed debate on this subject now more than 6 months ago. So it would be in order if there was an motion, if anybody wanted to bring the subject back to council. Although having said that, my informal advice from the monitoring officer is that his advice would be unchanged from that provided in the original debate, the previous debate. So I think, again, it's something that we've just got to take a view on in the longer term. Next I've got, so could you move your minutes, Councillor Hawkins? Sorry, I nearly forgot that then.
Yeah, I'll move those minutes, thank you.
Thank you very much. If you could vote in favour or against receiving and noting those minutes, please.
Okay, Chair, I've got 36 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm those minutes are received and noted. A self-inflicted wound next. As Chair of the Standard Committee, I'd like to, which was held on the 10th of November, minute numbers 7 to 13 on pages 75 to 77. I'd like to move my minutes, please. Coming back with my different hat on, would members please now vote in favour or against receiving or noting these minutes?
I've got 37 votes in favour, Chair.
Thank you very much. Fortunately, I can confirm those minutes are received and noted. The next is agenda item 9L, which is another matter of urgency. It's been added to our agenda this evening because Personnel Committee made a recommendation to Council on the 30th of November in relation to our apprentice pay policy. This needs urgent consideration to meet the required internal timescales. So again, excuse me, I'd like to move the minutes of the Personnel Committee held on the 30th of November, minutes 7 to 16, pages 78 to 81. Would members please vote in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes?
Okay, Chair, I have 40 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm these minutes are received and noted. Next is on to agenda item 10, governance arrangements, and this is a report from the monitoring officer. Henry, would you like to present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this report sort of combines a few different items that need to be dealt with. So if I take them in the order that they are presented. So firstly, at the October Council meeting, members agreed to adopt a revised Code of Conduct complaint procedure. That necessitated some changes to the Constitution to bring it into effect, essentially. And that's what this element now does. So Appendix 1 shows you the changes that I'm advocated to be made to ensure that the Constitution reflects what will be the revised procedure. It also asks for confirmation that the revised procedure will take effect from the 1st of January that just enables me to put in place those arrangements and to notify the towns and parishes that there will be a new arrangement as of that date. The rest of it is really sort of update in terms of what else we will need to do to recruit a couple of positions. It also has constitutional changes to bring into effect a previous council decision to have an independent member on the Audit and Governance Committee, which was a decision back in February of this year. So there are some changes to the constitution to reflect that. And then finally, there are a couple of appointments that need to be dealt with. Firstly, Councillor Wright, Chris Wright, has stepped down from the Planning Committee, and so there are two councillors who have been put forward or have been nominated to replace Councillor Wright because the independent group do not wish to fill that position. So it's now a matter for council to decide upon. The papers refer to Councillor Bruce from the Conservative group and Councillor Taylor from the Democratic Alliance group. Councillor Taylor has been substituted for Councillor Coleman. So that will need to be a preference vote between Councillor Bruce and Councillor Coleman. And then finally, Councillor Hawkins has stepped down as a director of the Community Interest Company in Exmouth Sideshaw, and Councillor Chapman is proposed as his replacement. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions there may be, but I would recommend that the preference vote for the Planning Committee is decided first, and then you can have an en bloc, if that transpires, an en bloc vote for the remainder of the recommendations, including those points.
Exactly in line with my thoughts on that one. In that we're in a unique situation of a vacancy arising on the Planning Committee as a consequence of one group deciding not to fill it. We have a slightly different situation. Now, what I think is an excellent idea here is that what we've agreed to do is to actually allow each candidate 2 minutes maximum, which Sue's going to monitor for me, to actually explain why they would wish, what they can offer for that position. And after that, we'll do a vote. Now, the classic, rather than have the normal in and out of meetings, what I propose to do is to use the good old coin toss for the two candidates, one to call, and the successful candidate who gets the toss call right actually gets to go first or second. So what I'm going to do is quite simple. I'm going to ask Councillor Bruce to say whether there's a coin in my right hand or my left hand, and if he calls it correctly, then he gets the choice. If not, then Councillor Coleman gets the choice. Councillor Bruce, what are you going, right or left?
Left, please.
Well, that was dangerous, wasn't it? There is the coin, and just to Paul Daniels, just to make sure there was nothing in the other one. So you get the choice. Would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first, Chair.
Okay, over to you. You have got 2 minutes, Councillor Bruce.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity, and also thanks to the leader for asking the Conservative group to put somebody forward. As a relative unknown to you, I'm grateful for the opportunity to at least partly introduce myself. I spent 6 years on planning with my previous council, and fully understand the complex nature of the role, the amount of reading, preparation and time required to discharge the responsibilities properly. I also understand the profound and long-lived consequences of decisions made in planning and the huge personal responsibilities that brings. In my opinion, this committee is one of the most important in the council, and my previous planning attendance record reflected that at 100%. If I'm selected, I intend to maintain that record. I was also a heritage champion with a roving brief across the district to protect vulnerable buildings, investigating alternative uses within the district, often involving local neighbourhood groups. I'm not sure whether we have a similar situation here. Among many memorable projects, I managed to save a listed church and several historic post boxes, which were very important to their respective communities. I found this a highly rewarding post, liaising between planning officers, councillors, and the public. Given that planning is one of the few committees that is quasi-judicial, it's important to me that planning remains politically impartial. And I'm proud to say that during my time on planning with my previous district council, we saw the highest level of cross-party working of any of our committees. And you would often find old adversaries sitting side by side in meetings. If selected, I would seek to foster the same impartiality. Obviously, I will need further training to bring me up to speed, but I'm keen to bring my experience to bear and contribute constructively and sensitively to the built fabric of our beautiful part of Devon.
2 minutes. Thank you.
I'm muted. My apologies for that. Thank you very much, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Coleman.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to become, or possibly become, a member of the planning committee. I believe, like our former speaker, planning is one of the most important functions of a local council. I believe it's very important that local people are represented in planning decisions. Indeed, I believe that planning ought to be decided by local people in most circumstances. Perhaps all far too much central control of planning. And I would try and speak for local people in planning decisions. I also recognise that we're in a climate emergency now, and it's important that the environmental impact of any planning decision is taken into account, because they might affect things for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So I will do my best to bring this about. I already have some planning experience with the Exeter Town Council. I've been on their planning committee for the last 2 years. I've had interesting work, and I believe it's important work, important that we preserve our heritage, our countryside, and our great country. So I hope you vote for me. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coleman. What I intend to do now is move to a very simple vote again. If you could vote with your green tick for Councillor Bruce and with your red cross for Councillor Coleman, or with a hand to indicate an abstention, please.
Still moving quite a bit. Okay, Chair, I have 21 green ticks and 25 red crosses and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much, Sue. On that basis, I confirm that Councillor Coleman's been elected to fill the position on the Planning Committee. Thank you very much. The position for Councillor Chapman doesn't require a confirmative vote in itself, but what I'd like to do now is actually move Henry's report directly from the chair and invite members to vote in favour or against recommending approval of the report, please.
And those appointments.
Sorry, to include those appointments, yes, basically the report in total.
Okay, I have 34 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. Confirm this report and its recommendations are recommended for approval. On to agenda item 11, which is a motion, a revision to wording related to poverty in council documents. If I could put this.
So we've got, sorry, Chair, we've got the temporary continuation of virtual meetings first.
Oh, well, sorry, my script has disappeared across.
Oh,
my apologies for that. I got carried away. Right, so we're on to agenda item
11, Chair.
11.
This is 11.
Oh, sorry, my notes have got a completely different agenda item 11, Sue. My apologies for that. So we'll move straight across onto that. I missed that. So we've got under a governance report, sorry, agenda item 11, which is on the temporary continuation of virtual meetings. Henry, would you like to present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, fairly straightforward. Obviously, in light of the current COVID situation, and as before, obviously now it's Omicron rather than anything else, but obviously with the position on that, the report is recommending that there should be an extension of approximately 4 months to the existing arrangements that we have, subject to a couple of caveats, one being the February budget meeting, but the recommendations as were previously presented are represented tonight, but with that extension to the 10th of May 2022. Otherwise, the arrangements are as before. So, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions there may be, but otherwise, yes, that's the recommendation. The arrangements continue till May 10th of May 2022, subject to the budget meeting being held in person. There was one correction in paragraph 5, which the word "for" was missing, but I'm sure members would have picked that up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Henry. I do have a piece that the Vice Chair, Councillor Val Ranger, has asked me to read this evening, which I'll do in a minute. But I think to get things moving, I'll move the recommendation from the Chair and invite first Councillor Vicky Johns to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to wholeheartedly agree with Henry's recommendation, especially in light of the fact that Boris Johnson has recently announced in the last hour or so that office workers must return to working from home from Monday. So if he's encouraging, he's literally just announced it about an hour or so ago. Boris Johnson has announced tonight that office workers must return to working from home from Monday. The announcement comes after a concerning rise in the numbers of people who have tested positive for the newest and most contagious strain of coronavirus, the Omicron variant. In a press conference from 10 Downing Street, he said that the government will reintroduce the guidance to work from home. He said employees should use the rest of this week to discuss new arrangements with employees. And from Monday, you should work from home if you can, go to work if you must, but work from home if you can to try and reduce contact in the workplace to slow down the transmission. So I think we would be absolutely foolish to even consider the possibility of doing anything other than Henry's recommendations, not only to keep ourselves safe, but more importantly, I think, to keep the staff safe. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Johns, and the timely update that I wasn't obviously aware of and that we've been in a meeting that time. Next, I've got Councillor Brown. Colin.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, I'm fully aware of the update that's just taken place, but we've all been told that COVID is now part of our lives, and us as such need to start living again and getting on with life. We were elected for the benefit of the residents of East Devon, and it cost over £350,000 a year in councillor allowances to run this council, not including officers' time and expenses. We have not had a face-to-face meeting for 6 months, and the vote today is to extend it for a further 4 months. There are no other councils in Devon that do not hold face-to-face meetings. It seems to have reached a situation where councillors want to receive their allowances, but at the same time do not want to attend legal meetings required by law. People are understandably questioning what is the point of having an elected East Devon District Council where it doesn't appear to provide taxpayers with any sort of value for money. Ultimate decision making is delegated to officers, cuts to services like grass cutting and street cleaning, proposals to close toilets or charge for ones that are left, and all the time still taking taxpayers' money for sitting at home rather than being able to account in public. I think that all members' allowances should revert to the basic of £4,360 only, with special responsibility allowance withdrawn immediately until such times as the council and its committees meets in public once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I've got Councillor Cahill. Fred.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, could I just ask Henry, at what stage will we get some information about this budget meeting, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. In the new year, it'll be. Obviously, we need to see how things unfold between now and early January. So, yeah, it will be a timed decision, but we need to understand how the land lies, and obviously investigate how, in the sense of where and the facility we might use. So there's a bit of work to be done, plus an understanding of where things are. So yeah, relatively early in the new year.
So it'd be safe to say in the first couple of weeks of January, we should have a decision.
I won't have my feet held to the fire, Councillor, but as soon as we can, we will let councillors know.
Thank you very much.
We'll be working towards it, Councillor Cahill. Don't worry about that. Next, I've got Councillor Sarah Jackson. Sarah.
Chair, there's an awful lot that I would like to say, although I suspect several of my colleagues will pick up on a lot of the points around the environment and financial savings. There are two things that I will say, though. Firstly, I very much welcome the continuation of virtual meetings for those of us who may be unwell, and luckily I do not have COVID, but I know some colleagues have had COVID and are are still suffering from long COVID, virtual meetings enables them to carry on doing their council work when they otherwise might not be able to. And I don't think that should be underestimated. At the same time, I will also come back on the point raised by Councillor Brown around the members' allowances for the additional roles that are taken on by various members of this council. The implication in what he says seems to be that those members are not doing additional work above that of a basic level of councillor, and that's simply untrue. Meetings have continued and work has continued to go on between members of cabinet and chairs of committees and officers, and I don't think that what was suggested there is fair, reasonable, or transparent, actually, because it gives the wrong impression of the work that councillors are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. I hope you recover swiftly. It sounds an awkward situation with your voice. I hope that recovers quickly anyway. Councillor Desarum, Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened very closely to much of the valuable debate that we have so far had this evening. And I think that I would refer you to the minutes of the IT Strata meeting that was that have just come out. And I am, well, pleased to say in some respect that Councillor Loudon and I are in this partial agreement on this matter. I read from the minutes, it says, Councillor Loudon advised that he felt that there will now always be hybrid meetings as they are more time efficient. Also, not having to travel to meetings had a positive impact on climate change. So I think that Councillor Loudon and I have very, very, common themes that way. And I think that it's very important that we do safeguard members' health and well-being. And I think that Boris Johnson's announcement tonight is clearly of grave concern to everyone in this chamber. And I note what our leader has said about the special responsibility allowances. And I think possibly that is something to have a look at, depending on how long we will be not meeting face to face. I also take a note of what Councillor Jackson said, that clearly there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes. But I think these are things that the public will expect us to look at in greater detail. But certainly for me, I share Councillor Loudon's belief in the hybrid system. I think that we need to, I think we were told that it would cost about £50,000 to follow the Exeter costs to get Strata to do what is necessary so that we don't get backdrop interference, etc. And I believe that the budget line would be about 50,000. I think if Councillor Loudon's on this call, I'm sure he'll recall as well. And I think that's something I would like to have put forward tonight so that we can actually get proper hybrid meetings in safety, and of course that is something very positive. So that's really all I had to say, Chair, and I'm most grateful for you to making the time for me to have had my say this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Desarum. So is that a formal specific amendment you're proposing there, or is that just
Yes, I would, if it's possible, I would have like to see a budget or amended so that we actually look to find out what the budget is. I know Councillor Loudon was with me, and they said Exeter Council had invested about, I think, 50,000 to get the right equipment, because they've got no technical issues, because we raised the problem that we have when we all go hybrid to Blackdown, that there's a lot of problems, backdrop problems, as we know. And they said, well, they've invested in this technology, and I think that we would ask Strata to follow up on this if the members feel that there is a desire to do so.
Can I perhaps just add an element of clarification, which comes from the recent leaders meeting? My apologies, colleagues, but if you don't mind me, I'll just bring this in, it might help. That what we also intended to do is that for this paper coming forward tonight relates specifically to what we're going to do temporarily, or we propose to do over the next 4 months broadly, to take us up to the annual meeting. What we also agreed to do as a leaders group was to move and get together to actually start to try and tease out more of what our vision was of the longer term view of our council meetings, and also to engage with the individual members of each of the individual committees themselves, so that when we come to May, when we come to the annual meeting, we're hopefully in a better position to actually have a thoughtful longer term view of how we might take our meetings forward. And of course, there's always hopefully the possibility that the 1972 Act will have been modernised by then, that will allow us to actually exercise some of those choices, which, as you'll know from Henry's report, government has actually undertaken a consultation on our future views on meetings, but we haven't actually heard anything back from it yet. It's or seen any evidence of action in relation to the 1972 Act. So what if Councillor de Sarum's happy, would he be happy if that was a piece of work that he's looking for in itself was deferred to be picked up in Q1 by the group leaders in association with the membership?
Absolutely. I have every confidence in the wisdom and experience of the group leaders, Chair. So
Thank you very much.
I'm more than happy to follow your recommendation.
Okay, so we'll stick with the report as presented for the moment. Councillor Gazzard, Steve.
Chair, sorry, I was
Councillor
named. I was named. Is it possible to?
Sorry, but as technically, as you know, being named doesn't actually imply a right of reply under the Constitution, although it has actually been our practice. If Councillor Gazzard's happy, if you want to respond specifically to your being mentioned in Councillor de Sarum's comments, then I'm very happy to pick that up. If Councillor Gazzard's happy.
Happy to give way, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gazzard. Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. I do appreciate that, and apologies, I didn't intend to interject in this discussion, but given what Councillor de Sarum has just said, I have taken cognizance of what the Prime Minister and leader of the Christmas party has said about us now needing to make sure that people work from home, and we are now being asked to work from home as councillors and our staff. And the point that I made about hybrid meetings was with a far more level playing field than with this current variant. So I wouldn't wish it to be implied that I was looking at hybrid meetings at this point. I very much would go with the guidance of the scientific advisors and the Prime Minister. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the clarification, Councillor Loudon. That's valuable. Councillor Gazzard, to you, please, now.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very important decision that we have to make tonight. I was hoping that we would get back to face-to-face meetings, but it's quite clear that this new variant that is doing the rounds now, and I do take a little bit of umbrage from what Councillor Brown had to say. As yet, we don't know how virulent this new virus is, and our top scientists are still working on it. And I wasn't aware, like you, Chair, of the Prime Minister's recommendation tonight. So I think we have to go along with what the recommendation is, that we continue with Zoom meetings until May, because not only must we think of ourselves, we've got to think of our families, our loved ones, and we have to think of all the staff that we employ, not just at E7, but staff in town and parish councils. I mean, it's going to have a huge implication as from Monday on how they're going to operate again. So I think it would be the right decision tonight to endorse what the recommendation is. Regarding special allowances, I know that my colleagues in these posts are working extremely hard. They may not be in Blackdown House, but they're giving up their time and energy at Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. And to say, well, perhaps we need to look to see whether they should have those allowances taken away, I think is the wrong thing to do. Even as councillors, we're still working very hard, and in some cases, some members are working even harder than they were before because of cases that are coming to us. So I will be supporting the recommendation, Chair, and I hope that by May we will be able to get back to whatever normal is going to be. But I think we have to err on the side of caution. I mean, I've had, like most of us expect, I've had the double jab and the booster. Friends of mine have had exactly the same, but they've caught COVID. So it's a very still a very dangerous situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. Thank you for that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. Councillor Rowland. Jack.
Thank you very much. I totally support this recommendation that's made. I thought it was a sensible decision that was made previously. I do take exception to the implication that councillors with special responsibilities aren't working as hard as if we were having face-to-face meetings. That is just utter nonsense, quite frankly, because taking my own situation into account, I have very many Zoom meetings with officers, which would be no different to as if I was travelling into Blackdown House to meet them. So to imply otherwise is just utter garbage, in my opinion. If you look to see what's happening with the Omicron variant, if it's even today, and I'll bring football into this as I'm a football fanatic, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club have declared that they've had 13 positive tests today. Now that, amongst a number of professional fit players, just brings home to me how transmissible this new variant is. And I actually think our democracy has actually improved by what we've been doing, because we have a greater attendance through having Zoom meetings. It doesn't detract at all from the public getting involved at all. In fact, I understand the public viewings of the recordings of council meetings are higher than even if we had face-to-face meetings in Blackdown House with the public attending. So I totally disagree with everything that Councillor Brown has mentioned. And I re-emphasise that I'm totally in support of the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Bruce. Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I hear what everyone's saying about this this situation, and I just wanted to sort of float the fact that this is a very fast-moving situation with this new variant, and my concern is that we don't know enough yet, and it may prove, I'm not saying that it will, but it may prove not to be as aggressive as we all fear it might be, and I hope that's proved correct by the scientists. Which is why I wonder whether we could perhaps shift it from 4 months to 2 months, because if we find that we come out on the other side of this after Christmas quickly and find this variant is not as big a threat as we seem to think it is, we can get back to face that much quicker. So I'm just floating the suggestion that 2 months instead of 4 might give us a bit of a better handle on things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are you proposing that as a formal amendment?
I'd just like to see what comments come from it, actually, Chair, just to see. I suspect by all the shaking heads I'm seeing on my screen, the answer is going to be no.
Well, I mean, we can leave it if you wish, or I'm quite happy to go for a seconder for a formal amendment if you wish it, or shall we move on?
Well, let's see if we get a seconder.
Anybody wish to second that amended proposal?
Happy to second it, Chair. Councillor Desarum. Happy to second it.
That's lovely. I mean, I assume we don't need to, nobody would want to speak particularly on that, would they, at this point? Or can we just take a vote on the amendment straight away? Would you be happy with that, members? Nope, somebody wants to speak on the amendment. Okay, well, because I've got a lot of people who want to speak on the main item. Could I ask those who would wish to speak on the amendment to indicate then, please, with a hand? Because so we need to deal with the amendment now rather than the substantive motion. Sorry, are all the hands remaining now? Those that would wish to speak on the amendment, please. Okay, I've got Councillor Faithful. Do you want to speak on the amendment, please? Which is basically to shorten the timescale from 4 months. Well, it's actually not quite 4 months from the time of the annual meeting to 2 months from the 17th of January. Councillor Faithful.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's actually along the lines of what I was wanting to say anyway. On the 14th of November, I was, and I'm sure plenty of other people would have been, taking part in a Remembrance Day service in Ottery St Mary Parish Church, we had approximately 300 people in Audley St Mary Parish Church sitting in normal seating arrangements in the pews, right next to each other. I've also been at town council meetings where we went all the stuff of distancing and then go to the pub afterwards and sit right next to each other straight after the meeting, the same group of people. I do acknowledge the comments, particularly the original comment by Councillor Johns about this latest issues. We do not know the severity of this particular strain, so I do support this amendment very much. Yes, I do want us to carry on for the moment, but can we sooner rather than later get back on track and have proper sensible meetings? I'm sure I have offered, as the chair knows, and I contacted Henry and the chair quite a lot of time back, offering myself to get quietly involved in looking through seating arrangements or anything like that. I've had no reply. I do not get any information because I'm on my own as independent, and I would appreciate being properly informed as to what is going on, because it all goes back to parties and groups and I get kept completely out of the conversation. But I do support this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
My apologies, didn't unmute. Thank you very much, Councillor Faithful. Councillor Parr, Helen.
Thank you. I want to support what Councillor Brown said. I don't know if he proposed it, but if he did,
no,
I will second it.
So we have an amendment on the table, Councillor Parr, at the moment, which was proposed by Councillor Bruce, second by Councillor Sarum, that would, instead of actually running the proposal through till the date of the annual meeting, which is currently the 11th of May, to actually review it after 2 months, which would be the 17th of March. That's the amendment we're going to deal with first. We can't deal with it.
Okay, so I'll wait till we can have put another amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Arnott. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I am speaking to this amendment, and the reason I can't vote for it is I really appreciate the good intention behind what Councillor Bruce has said, and I get that. But I'd invite him to look around his own party tonight. We have Councillor Parr, who doesn't really understand whether she should be speaking to an amendment or not. We have Councillor Brown, who is making, frankly, almost a comedy speech about members' allowances, and we have Councillor De Sarum somewhere in between. What is the Conservative Party line on this? Well, my advice to them is to heed your own equally comic Prime Minister, who's finally realised we need to shut things down. Now, if you think that's going to be different for us to be able to meet again, clearly, in February, say, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The other thing that worries me is that what we're doing is wasting the most enormous amount of officer time, asking Henry to bring forward the same report over and over again with what are effectively the same recommendations. A comment has been made, we're the only council, I'm not sure if it's the case, but I'll take it at face value, that is still meeting primarily on Zoom. Well done us. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Miller. Paul.
Thanks, Chair. I wasn't planning to speak on this, but I wanted to speak on the amendment. I'm speaking against the amendment, although I wanted to thank Councillor Bruce, because it's clearly a well-meaning amendment. The reason I'm not going to vote for it, I don't think, is because I actually think May is a very, very good date, not just because of this very worrying variant, but also I think May 2022 provides us in a new civic year. We have to consider officers who have gotten used to our virtual ways, and I think there are lots of benefits to that. It means that working age councillors are able to attend more meetings. It also gives time as well for you, Chair, and others to look into future hybrid arrangements, and that will take some time too. That will have a great, and I'm glad to hear Councillor Tasaram supports that, because that will have a great positive effect on attendance going forward. And of course, we're still awaiting the government's plans on future hybrid meetings. So the reason I'm voting against the amendment is simply just because I think May is the right time. Actually, almost regardless of this variant, I think it's a wise recommendation. So I'll be voting against the amendment and in favour of the original recommendation if the amendment doesn't pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one more speaker on the amendment, Councillor Coleman. Andrew.
Good evening again. I want to speak against the amendment before the motion. I think it's a very good motion to be put forward by our admin, and I think basically I really take issue with the speech earlier where it suggested that people working at home aren't working. I mean, in many ways, people are even more productive at home than they are working in an office or working in a meeting, for example. And the council is saving money as well, because normally they'll be paying expenses for people travelling back and forth to the meeting, which they're not doing. So I wonder, be interested to know how much money has actually been saved over this past year, because people hadn't had to travel to meetings they can access from Zoom. There's also as well things like the cost of the heating the building and things like that as well. So I certainly believe that Zoom meetings should continue. I think it helps protect the environment. It enables people to work more efficiently. Though it'd be good to see hybrid meetings as well. I'd love to see some face-to-face meetings come back when it's safe, but I really don't think it's safe yet. I think I was calling people to reject the amendment, doesn't see much point in it, and vote for the motion as a whole.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Johns, you have spoken once, but you've not spoken on the amendment. Is this on the amendment specifically?
It is, yeah. I would be strongly against the amendment, and I'm actually quite offended by Councillor Brown's comments earlier. Is he insinuating that anybody from working from home isn't doing their jobs correctly? That's what I'd like to know, because I know an awful lot of people that work from home permanently and they do a fantastic job.
Okay.
I think that I'm strongly against the amendment. I think we should stick to the work that Henry's done, and 4 months, I think we'll see how this variant pans out, for want of a better phrase. And we try to keep people as safe as we can. We didn't close down quickly enough the first time, and look what happened. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak again.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johns. Of course, one thing with the amendment is it doesn't actually, going with the original report doesn't actually stop us doing work in the interim. I think that's an important distinction. So work on the longer term solution, I would envisage, would still progress in any event. Councillor Bruce, it's now you've obviously your right to sum up on your amendment. If you could do it briefly, that would be lovely, please, and then we'll take it to a vote.
Thank you, Chair. I will do. I'm slightly concerned about the last few comments that my amendment is getting mixed up with previous announcements by our group leader. This is a separate amendment and should be treated as such, but every person that's spoken in the last few minutes has included a response to the previous one. So I'm just making the point that this is a standalone amendment and has nothing to do with any previous comments, and it is well intended. I do feel that we're going into this particular phase with COVID into an unknown situation very rapidly, and I'm just concerned that if we come out the other end in a positive way equally as rapidly, we need to have the flexibility to respond as a council with regard to face-to-face meetings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and that point's well made. Just as a general principle, though, Councillor Bruce, from the chairs, we actually did leave an earlier exit open in the last resolution, in the last report, and as far as I would be concerned, that would be by implication open in any event, but actually extending the 4 months rather than the 2 means that we aren't necessarily going to be going through this again, because of course we'd have to then review at the height of the winter in the event that the amendment is successful. And so I think it's possibly unnecessary, but that's a personal view, not as chair. And obviously I think what I'd like to do now is, Maddie's put her hand up. Councillor Chapman, is it in relation to the amendment?
Yes, Chair. You know me, I like clarity. Can someone tell me, please, like Henry Gordon Lennox, there's a lot of, usually beginning of the year, changes in the law on licensing. Now, licensing, as you, I'm sure, are aware, we have to meet face to face anyway. We need to include this because if something comes up and they need us to vote, although it's a small committee, it can be done quite safely. So, you know, would Henry like to comment on this? Because I don't want to vote against something that legally we have to vote face to face on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chapman. And as if by magic, Councillor Wibley's got his hand up.
I'm not entirely sure that what Councillor Chapman has just said is the case. I'm fairly sure that the licensing committee is like any other committee, and the licensing subcommittee doesn't have to be held in person by law anyway. I mean, I stand to be corrected on that, but I thought the arrangements that we've had thus far have been correct.
That's my understanding, in that it's covered by the 2003 Licensing Act rather than the 1972 Local Government Act.
Yeah, the subcommittee stuff.
Yeah, from the committee point of view. Sorry, I don't want to get diverted. I'm conscious of Alistair making the quite pertinent and accurate point that we were talking about the amendment at this present, not the substantive resolution. So what I'd like to do now, please, if we could, is vote by using your green tick in favour of the amendment, which would mean that there is a review date of the 17th of March, or against the amendment, which would mean that we then put the substantive resolution. So effectively, it's would you vote in that on that basis? Is everybody clear? Or abstentions through a hand?
You said a review date. Was it a review specifically, or was that going to be the return to normal date?
Well, it was in the absence of any resolution 3 weeks before that, then it would be a return to normal date, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's what I understood. The 17th of March would be the return to normal, subject to what might.
Correct. Yes, and that would what I'm saying is that's why I talked about meetings and timing. That would mean effectively we'd have to go through this process again, probably 3 weeks to a month in advance of that date. Yeah. And you know, the danger for me is that we're reviewing it more than we actually need to. But anyway, so if you're for the amendment to bring it forward, green ticks, please. If you're against the amendment, a red cross.
Clarification, Chair. I'm sorry to confuse things a little bit here.
Yeah, please do.
My intention was to come back in 2 months' time to look at the situation again. There was never an intention to say after 2 months we all go back to face to face. That's not what I'm saying at all, because we need to look in 2 months' time at what the situation is going forward. So it won't be a decision to go back to face at the 2 month deadline.
Right. Well, can I just jump across? Sorry to be jumping across here again with Alistair, but there is actually, I believe, in terms of the recommendation, there is a comment that actually talks about unless. There it is. If I go straight to recommendation 1 on the documents in the presentation, it says save as provided for in recommendation 3 until 23:59 on the 10th of May 2022. Brackets all such earlier period as may be decided by subsequent decision. So in the same way as we did last time, the ability to bring that forward, and I had this discussion regularly with Councillor De Sarum and Councillor Brown over the last few months, that there is the ability for us to bring that forward anyway if there's a material change in the environment that we're dealing with. And obviously I'd look to bring that forward as chair. So in effect, this is where I mentioned that whether the amendment's really necessary or not, but it's up to you.
In that case, Chair, given that on board, provided we can revisit it, should the situation change, I'm happy to withdraw my amendment. I'm sorry for wasting council's time.
No, it's an important point to get out. If members, I appreciate that, and obviously as from the chair's point of view, and in that this has been a chair-driven initiative, I'm happy to give you that personal undertaking that if things are materially different in the interim, then I'm happy to review it again in the context of the group leaders meeting and subsequently with council as required.
Thank you, Chair.
So on the basis that, thank you, Councillor Bruce, that amendment is withdrawn. If we could delete all the ticks and crosses. What I'd like to do now is obviously recognising that all ticks and crosses have been removed now. we go back to the substantive report, and I'd like please now to take contributions from those who originally indicated they wanted to comment on the original report. Sorry, the ticks and the hands have disappeared again. So if you did put your hand up, can you please do so again if you want to speak? You check your hands are there. Okay, right, that's it. They seem to be coming back now. Councillor Rylands, Helena.
Thank you, Chair. So as the mother of a brand new doctor who graduated into COVID, I am constantly shocked about how blasé people can be about COVID. I know from, well, obviously first-hand experience from listening to my daughter how very overworked the hospitals are. And I feel that part of the blaséness possibly comes from people not really understanding it. It's not just about dying. People don't seem to understand that you can actually end up with life-changing, lifelong fallout from this disease. We should not be playing in any way with this disease. There's nothing we should be politicizing about it. None of us should be aiming to catch COVID in any way, shape or form. And as such, I heartily support anything that keeps us out of harm's way and protects our families, and more particularly the officers who have to go into Blackdown House to work. People watching this may not be aware, but actually Blackdown House Chamber is not big enough for us all to meet in. So we'd have to hire out a much, much larger room, which would actually cost the taxpayers of East Devon quite a significant amount of money if we did go back to face-to-face meetings at undue time. Furthermore, over the last year, I believe Councillor Ranger did the fact-finding on this. Expenses claims for mileage have dropped from 85 or 90,000 in 2019, 2020, which is the last available year for obvious reasons, down to something like £1,300. That is a substantial saving of money, of people's time, of the environment, and it has allowed people, as already rightly been pointed out, it's allowed people who wouldn't otherwise be able to attend meetings to be able to attend meetings. Now, I don't know what part of work from home Councillor Brown doesn't understand, but the clue is in the name. It's working from home. And I've been working from home for 17 years now. Adding the council work to that has enabled me to be able to go attend to all sorts of meetings I wouldn't otherwise be able to attend in a working day. Today, right now, I'm probably in my 7th hour of council work, including casework. If I'd had to add on top of that 2 hours, no, actually probably, because I had been to 2 meetings today, 4 hours of travelling time, I wouldn't be able to earn a living as well. So what virtual meeting is enabling is people who would not otherwise be able to become councillors are able to become councillors, because combining council work and their day job has become a lot easier. Not only is it easier for the councillors, it is also saving money, saving the council money, saving the taxpayers money, and it is saving the environment. There is nothing not to like about the ability to work from home as councillors. And it's, of course, absolute twaddle to suggest that any of us is doing less work than we were before the pandemic. You know, for my part, I've been a councillor for 4 years. I don't think I've ever worked more than I have in the last year on council work. I've been able to attend all sorts of meetings I wouldn't otherwise have been able to attend. And I just think it's absolutely extraordinary to suggest that we're just sitting around twiddling our thumbs. I mean, because that is absolutely not my experience, and I'm quite convinced it's not the experience of many of the people on this call, around this table, I should say. So to conclude, I would actually urge you to vote for this extension, because it will see us all the way through the dark months of the winter, when contagion from COVID and flu and norovirus and gastroenteritis and all the other things that we end up with when we're cooped up together in cold, damp weather become more likely. Because we do need to keep sparing the hospitals. You know, that much is certain. The hospital's crisis situation is not abating at the moment. We need to help them out. And if by not catching all of these other things that we can't be vaccinated against, we are helping them, then we should do that. Because what you do when you deliberately expose yourself to an illness like COVID is you don't just put yourself at risk, you put your friends and your relations at risk, you put your neighbours at risk, you put anybody you might meet down the pub less than a metre away at risk. And you are also putting at risk all the medical staff who've been working flat out for the last year and a half, trying to keep us all healthy. And I just think that's not nothing. We really need to be considering the wider situation. It's not just about what we're told to say by our party leaders. I'm sorry, it's not that. It's a public health situation. And we need to be sensible. And we need to not meet face to face, because that is how the virus spreads. It doesn't matter how many times you say it doesn't spread in this way, it does spread in this way. It jumps from one warm body to another warm body. That's literally what the virus needs. It doesn't matter what you believe, it will just jump from person to person. So the less we meet face to face, the better.
Thank you, Councillor Ryland. Sorry to interrupt you in full throw, and there's obviously a lot on the subject that you, in background knowledge, you have. Councillor Bickley, Denise.
Thank you, Chair. I can't top that really. I just got a few points to make. I've said this before, I work in a school. We are flagging badly at the school. All schools are like this, under so much pressure. But we want to keep those kids in school as much as we possibly can. Some things you shouldn't give way on, and some things you can. Now, we're having completely effective meetings like this. I feel like I've seen all my colleagues very regularly, because we meet regularly on Zoom. But some of them I haven't seen for a long time. But it doesn't mean that we aren't effective. You know, looking around the screens here, I can see Councillor Arnott. I wonder how many hours he's been on meetings today, how many people he's spoken to. It is offensive so badly to say that people like that are not working. Yeah, 10 hours he's showing up at me at the moment, 10 hours today. Now, Councillor Brown, if you're not doing anything there, then in your role, I know you're not cabinet, obviously you're on the other side, presumably you're not doing very much. And I think that's a real shame, because personally I work part-time and the rest of the time I'm counselling, and I am doing it hard. So how offensive. Your own Prime Minister of your party in the country has said today that we are meant to be working from home. We need to listen to that. And you are blurring the message again. And no wonder people don't take social distancing and mask wearing seriously. If people like yourself, who are actually in the public eye, are saying that this disease is over with and we need to live with it. I know several people now who have lost somebody to this illness. I know a child who is in hospital at the moment who's under 12, clinically extremely vulnerable, and she cannot have a vaccination. So us travelling around just to suit your aim is ridiculous. We've got nativity plays all coming up this week, presumably all cancelled now. I think people have got far more to worry about than whether we are meeting face to face or not. So this is ridiculous, and I can't believe we're still talking about it. Until this is over, let's just take this opportunity to just say yes to this motion and move on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bickley. We are getting some repetition now, and obviously one or two people I know have already spoken, so I won't be looking to allow another bite, I'm afraid, on this one, else we'll be here all night. So if you'll bear with me on that one. If we could, and also if we could stick to new points or very brief points, please. Councillor Young, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try not to repeat what other people have said. I really do miss meeting you all. I would love to attend meetings at Blackdown House. I'd love to speak to officers in the real. I'm getting fed up sitting in this chair doing Zoom meetings, but that's the way it is. To me, it's an absolute no-brainer. We have to go with the recommendation. This is where I'm going to have to repeat myself, I'm afraid, but I am very upset by the grotesque insinuation that cabinet members are not value for money because we are not attending Blackdown House. The COVID emergency has meant that I and all cabinet members' workload has actually increased dramatically. For me, I'm working 6 days a week, no holiday for 2 years. And so rather than handing back any money, I think we deserve a thank you from members of the public and the other councillors. And this accusation of us not being the value for money, I think should be retracted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. Swiftly moving on, Councillor Ragg, Eileen.
Oh, thank you. Just to take back quite a few years when we had attendance allowances. Councillor Brown mentioned attendance allowances, at which point my ears pricked up. because quite frankly, I was watching paint dry until then. He said that we get attendance allowances or allowances for attending meetings. Well, no, at one point there were attendance allowances, and I've seen members of his party who were dominant in those years turn up, sign the book to claim their attendance allowance, stay for 10 minutes and clear off. So I think this is a much more effective way of working, saving in travelling time. I won't go over it all again because Councillor Rylance eloquently expressed it all. But I think if we're going to go back to that sort of thing and wasting time travelling when we could be working, benefiting our communities, then quite rightly, we're called the Jurassic Coast. It's going back in time. We've got to move on. Despite COVID, we found this new way of working, and let's get on. I'll be voting for the motion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wragg. Again, moving on swiftly, Councillor Arnott. Paul.
Chair, can you please indulge me? I need to look something up quickly. Can you skip me and come back in a second? Thank you.
A brave chair. I shall skip the leader and go straight on to Councillor Kemp. Jamie.
Thank you, Chair. As you're all aware, I'm the newest member of the council, less than 3 months in, and I've not met the majority of the people in this chamber, and I can't wait to meet you all. It would be really nice. However, I missed out on my induction, as everybody else had when they first became a councillor. But being able to work from home and via Zoom has allowed me to join in to as many meetings as I wanted to. And I hope it's made me a better councillor. I can look at things, and I've been in meetings that I didn't understand or wouldn't ever have known about. And that's really important. As also, it's been said, you know, I can spend more time with the people in my ward because I'm not having to commute. You know, I live as far away from Honiton as you can get, and I'm not having to travel. Okay, it's brilliant. I have 3 young children. I don't have to sacrifice time with my children to do what I want to do as a councillor, and I can take part a huge amount more. Councillor Riley mentioned, you know, the expenses and everything else, and I'm not going to go over that again, but it's true. This council wants to become net zero. We want to do everything we can. We can't be commuting across the country, 60 councillors, backwards and forwards to silly meetings that are important, but not for the sake of 20 minutes here or an hour there, and we're wasting time. This is really, really important, and it's the way forward. I hope we can do this, and I certainly will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Councillor Miller. Paul, briefly, please.
Yeah, and it's on an issue that hasn't even been raised yet, apart from Councillor Brown. He said that these were senior officer recommendations, and the way he said it suggested that these in some way conflicted with member decisions. I would like to know from Councillor Brown whether there, in his memory, have there been any senior officer decisions that have had to be made because of the law that have ever conflicted with what the members have decided in that meeting. I think he'll find it's never happened. So I just wanted to make that clear, because journalists could come out of this meeting reporting that these are senior officer decisions that might be conflicting with what members are saying. I think that the system has worked very well. I'll be voting in favour of the motion. I think there have been some very good speeches. Thanks very much, Chair, for letting me speak on the motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Blakey. Kevin.
Again, Chair, my apologies. I don't know what's going on with the IC. I didn't touch my screen, and that hand seems to have come up from nowhere. So I didn't actually need to speak on this. Thank you.
That's right. I'm sorry. Computer virus in Cranbrook, perhaps. What I've got 4 people set to speak here. Now, what I'm not going to do, as I said, I don't want to get anybody coming back who's already spoken. So I've got Councillor Parr, who hasn't spoken yet because it was in relation to deferred from the amendment. So Councillor Parr, Helen.
Thank you. And quite clear from what councillors are saying that they are out and about in their wards, carrying on their business, going shopping, whatever else they're doing. But the main point, I think, and why I did support what Councillor Brown said, was that whether we like it or not, people are questioning what is the point. We have given over, by going on these Zoom meetings, we've given over our powers of decision making to officers. And I mean, this is turkeys voting for Christmas. When it comes to unitary, where will the arguments be? Quite clearly, councillors are not needed. And as to saying that we should have revert immediately to meetings, I don't think that is what Councillor Brown said, and anyway, he will speak, I'm sure. But what he did say, and I think this is quite right, because senior councillors actually have given over their responsibilities, their decision making, that they should consider, in view of obviously the serious financial problems of this council, whether they want to take their special responsibility allowances, because actually we are trying to, we are having to make cuts because we have no money. And I think this is possibly one of the ways that we could save some money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parr. Now, of the people I've also got at the moment, I've got 3 of the 4 hands showing have actually spoken before. So recognising that we've got a motion to follow now, and we've already run over the 2 hours, 10 minutes. I'd like, with their indulgence, to actually, what I would to do is just come very briefly to ask them a quick question. Bruce, say for example, Bruce, Councillor de Sarum, you've got 10 seconds. Can you just quickly comment anything you had to add?
Just the legal situation, the fact that the key committees, licensing, planning and cabinet, should meet more regularly in order to be, like we're going to meet next month. So I think the key problem is, are we going to be legal or are we not? That's really what I wanted to do.
Okay, the only answer I would give you on that one is that the monitoring officer is comfortable with the way we're handling our business. So hopefully that will reassure you. Councillor Brown, briefly, 10 seconds, please.
I might take more than 10 seconds. Attendance allowance, I never mentioned attendance allowance in any way, shape or form whatsoever. So I don't know where Councillor Ragg got that one from. And to say that I'm doing nothing is a total fabrication. I go to 9 different parish meetings, meeting people face to face. I do about 200 miles plus a month. I don't claim a penny from East Devon in expenses for it. That's me doing nothing. And with regards to have things been changed, recommendations that have been made, been changed? Yes, they have been. There was a planning recommendation that was made that was part of the conditions that were agreed at planning were added to by a senior officer. So yes, things have been changed.
Okay, can we park that one there, Colin, and pick it up at a later date? But I've given you a chance of reply, and obviously you've been able to speak twice now on this. So, and I say I do want to move forward. So I've got the leader, Paul, Councillor Arnott.
I'll be very quick, Chair. I must acknowledge that it may be in the past that Conservative leaders have been, in the words of Dominic Cummings, as thick as mints and lazy as toads. But for your information, Chair, if I do a calculation, then I work a minimum of 50 weeks on this job, 50 hours per week, and I don't. I do a lot more than that. I'm on £4 an hour, Chair, so I'm going to keep that with pride. Thank you.
Good. Well, as I'm sure you didn't mean any offence because of course your most recent Conservative Party leader was actually me as a Conservative leader of the council. And I must admit, I did always joke I hadn't worked for such a little small hourly rate since I was about 10. But anyway, briefly, Councillor Bruce.
I hope he wasn't referring to me either.
Councillor Bruce, could you quickly?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment, something that hasn't really sort of raised its head in this debate, but it is pertinent not just to myself, but to a number of people, I suspect, who are in a sort of rural situation. And then it's the signal strength. You know, it's all very well talking about Zoom meetings, but, you know, I have felt deep frustration when I found myself sort of skipping out of meetings simply because whilst I want to contribute via Zoom, my signal strength does not allow me to do so. Now, there's nothing the council can do about that. I'm simply flagging that up as a sort of sub-issue when we do talk about Zoom meetings, that I hope that is brought into account in some way. Thank you, Chair.
Again, it's in my list of things to bring forward when we discuss the longer term future of ourselves and council meetings. So we're well aware of that, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Ranger, do you? I noticed you've actually given me a piece that you wanted me to read. Would you like to speak, or would you like me to read it?
I'd like you to read it, please.
Okay. Well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Ranger Val. Councillor Ranger did provide me earlier with a piece that she wanted to read to council this evening. She's problems with her internet and she's not able to get a reliable signal. So with your indulgence, I'll do that. And at that point, we'll then move to the vote, please. This is to be read on behalf of Vice Chair, Councillor Val Ranger, by the Chair. I'd like to highlight to colleagues some of the other benefits we've secured during the use of virtual meetings. Between 2017 and 2020, we members made £90,000 of travel claims, an average of £22,000 per year. This is reduced to just £1,077 in 2021 when we moved to remote meetings. Secondly, not needing to travel to meetings has reduced our personal carbon footprint. This is a key priority for the council in our drive towards carbon neutrality. Thirdly, to hire West Point for our recent full council meeting cost £1,530, rather a lot for a meeting which lasted only 45 minutes or thereabouts, but of course preferable to anyone becoming ill as a result. This did not include the extra hassle or workload on our officers who had to set West Point up. I believe calls for a return to face-to-face meetings are a scandalous waste of public funds at a time of financial pressure. They're also short-sighted with regard to the welfare of colleagues, both members and officers, and frankly selfish in the additional risk to our vulnerable colleagues and their families. As well as protecting our colleagues, we should also be pushing the government for an update to the ridiculously outdated Local Government Act of 1972. I'm grateful to our colleague, Councillor Ranger, for sending that to me and obviously read it on her behalf. I've noticed Councillor Blakey now, either he's pressed the wrong button again or he actually does want to speak.
Again, apologies, Chair, because I don't know what's going on with this thing. I haven't even touched it. It's obviously developed a mind of its own.
We've all heard that one before. It doesn't wash. Anyway, joking apart.
Unlike its operator, it obviously has a mind of its own.
Well, he probably wants you to say something, Kevin. Anyway, now I think we've exhausted this debate. What I'd like to do now is to say I move from the chair, which doesn't require a second. So if we can go to the vote, please, on the recommendations of the report as put. Green ticks, please, in favour of the recommendations en masse. Red cross against, and hand, please, for abstention.
Okay, Chair, I have 32 votes in favour, 1 against, and 7 abstentions.
Thank you very much. Well, I can confirm, even though it isn't on my script here at all, that that the report is accepted or is recommended as put. Thank you very much, members. And we do move now on to another important motion, agenda item 11, which is this motion is the final item on our agenda today, and indeed for this year. revision to the wording related to poverty in council documents. And what I'd like to do is invite Councillor Rylance as a proposer to please speak to her motion. Councillor Rylance.
Thank you, Chair. I'll not detain you for very long. My aim is not to make this into anything like a very long debate. My motivation in bringing this motion was that back in 2019, when the last figures available are, there were 13% of children living in poverty. In some parts of East Devon, it was up to 34%. 16 million people in this country don't even have 1 month in savings. And an extremely worrying number, more than that, don't have 3 months in savings. What this means, if there's one adverse event in the family, is that essentially people risk homelessness on a month-to-month basis. Even in East Devon, even though we are quite a prosperous area, we have dozens of households in every single ward, at least 15 in every ward, and up to over 200 in some wards, that have up to 3 dimensions of poverty. Destitution, sorry, not just poverty, but destitution. Now, why do I want to change the wording in our council documentation? Because it harks in an unpleasant manner back to the old Victorian notions of deserving and undeserving poverty in my mind. So involuntary poverty has a converse, which is voluntary poverty. Now, the way things are at the moment, the economic climate we're in at the moment, and the way things are evolving, and with COVID that we've just had for 20 months, it's unthinkable that anybody would come looking for help in a desperate situation if they were in what quote unquote is a voluntary poverty situation. Nobody is going to be coming asking for help if they are deliberately poor. And whilst I fully acknowledge that there are some orders of monks and nuns that opt for deliberate poverty, I firmly believe that anybody who'd contemplate asking us for help would not be in that situation. And I hope you will agree with me on that. So why I'd like to remove this word involuntary from all our council documentation is because I would hate to think that any level of gatekeeping or impediment will put in the way of anybody needing assistance. If anybody felt that they might be judged or turned down because they're the wrong kind of poor, then they might be put off asking for help. Now, the Rowntree Foundation has specifically listed among its vectors for redress the help of local authorities. So we actually have a very acknowledged part to play. The Rowntree Foundation is actually calling for us to be able to disperse funds to people. And I know that through the pandemic, we have done exactly that role. So what I'm asking you to do, colleagues, is that bit by bit, as each of these documents is revised, that as a wholesale policy, we remove the word involuntary from in front of poverty in every single of these documents. Now, why I'm asking to do it bit by bit is because I acknowledge that we don't want to spend any of the time crawling through every single document on the website, looking for every instance and doing it on a specific basis. As these documents are revised, it seems very logical to remove the word involuntary from the term involuntary poverty. And I hope that it's not too controversial a concept. So I would ask you to vote in favour of this, please. And that is all I'm going to say on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rylance. I do actually have as a seconder for this moment an indication that Councillor Bonetta was going to second this motion, but obviously he's not actually present. So could I actually ask for an alternative second, please?
I'd be happy to in Councillor Bonetta's absence.
Well, okay, Councillor Miller, if the minutes can record you as the second of this motion, perhaps you'd like to speak to it, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak on the motion. And Councillor Bonetta sends his apologies. He's in a Honiston Town Council meeting this evening. I have to make an admission. I seconded a motion back in 2019 which referred to the term involuntary poverty, and it just skipped it. So I'm a hypocrite in some ways, but also I think we become numb to these terms. I mean, one similar term that goes around is intentional homelessness, which is used across the country and is still kind of in law. The Vagrancy Act is another really dangerous piece of legislation that's still in existence that kind of punishes rough sleepers for them kind of being rough sleepers and causing a nuisance on the street. It's a Victorian, as Councillor Rylance has said, it's a Victorian way of speaking. But I don't think we, you know, and by saying that, by making that admission, I'm hoping that this doesn't become a blame game in terms of, which I don't think it is, of councillors that have used the term in the past. I think we're always evolving our language as a culture. And I completely agree with Councillor Rylance, because I think the language we use has a very, very important impact on the people of our district and their ability or inability to access our services. So I think what Councillor Rylance has proposed is very proportionate. She's not made it a party political motion. And I would like to, and in seconding it, I look forward to the vote on it, because I hope that it will get unanimous approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Bruce. Alistair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to second that motion, but instead, Councillor Miller's beat me to it. I will simply support the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. I completely wholeheartedly support this motion. No one in our district is going to be in a position by choice where they have to make a decision about whether they eat or they put the heat on, or which members of their family will eat today, if at all. It's simply not something that people do by choice. So I commend Councillor Rylance for putting forward this motion, and also for such a pragmatic approach to changing the wording. I think it is very, very important for how our residents perceive us and how they believe we perceive them. So thank you very much, and I support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Armstrong. Megan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really glad that Councillor Miller said what he did, because I was hoping I wasn't going to embarrass him by saying, oh, he's gone off the screen. I can't look at him now. But I've just pulled up the minute, actually, from the full council on the 23rd of October 2019. So, and I won't go through all the names of the people who supported this at the time, because I don't want to cause anybody any undue embarrassment. But I remember that I put in an amendment to this, and it was overruled by certain members of this current council. And I didn't agree, because they talked about, and I know this is not what Councillor Rylance is talking about tonight, but I thought it was sort of, there were two sentences that were agreed at that meeting: that nobody should get into poverty without immediate help from East Devon District Council, and nobody should be in involuntary poverty longer than 2 years in East Devon. And I thought that was a ridiculous statement. There was ridiculous statements to say, because my main concern was that there weren't smart objectives. They weren't specific, they weren't measurable, they weren't achievable, they weren't realistic, and they weren't time-bound. And that's really what my main argument was. And we were also awaiting a report which had been done by Libby and Libby and Amy in housing about poverty, and we were waiting for that as well before we took any decision. So that's just a little bit of a history background, and it's just to say that actually I didn't agree with any of this, because I thought the wording wasn't very good at the time. So I'm more than happy to support this, and thanks for raising it, Eleanor. And perhaps we should have done it before now, but that's a bit of the background anyway.
I had a feeling you'd embarrass me, Councillor Armstrong.
I'm not sure we're in the business of embarrassing anybody tonight, though. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Armstrong. Okay. In the absence of any other speakers indicated, Councillor Rylance, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very glad that it seems to be canvassing quite wide-ranging support. That it wasn't my intention to make it in any way political, so I'm very glad it hasn't become so. And please, I very strongly urge you to vote for this, because people who are living in poverty or on the edge of poverty are in extraordinarily vulnerable situations in ways that people people who have sufficient resources cannot even imagine. And words hurt. As a linguist, I know this all too well. Words are important. Words have power, and we need to be mindful of the effect of our words. And that is why I'm asking you to vote for my motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see I have no hands showing. Motion's been summed up. Can I please then have all votes in favour of the motion as put with green ticks, against with your red cross, and a raised hand to signify an abstention, please.
Okay, Chair, I have 36 votes in favour, 38 votes in favour.
Well, thank you very much, and can confirm that that motion's been supported without exception. And that brings our council meeting to a close. Can I thank all my member and officer colleagues, not just for their support this evening, but also throughout what's been another challenging year for our East Devon team. As this is our last full council of 2021, I'd also like to take this opportunity to wish everyone associated with our council, including members of the public watching our meeting on the East Devon District Council YouTube channel, a safe Christmas and a happy new year. Members, can I remind you that until the democratic services confirm that live streaming and recording has stopped, you can still be seen and heard across the worldwide reach of the internet, and that any comments